Today we discussing Parsha Noah. Funny enough, when I decided to record this, it started raining outside, so I had to move to another room so that I can isolate myself from the noise of the coming down rain. That's an interesting point in itself, I must admit. So Noah. The year is 1536 as per Jewish calendar, which is 4242 years ago. God instructs Noah, whom God considers as the only righteous man in the whole world, which is consumed by violence and corruption and immorality. God instructs him to build a large wooden teva, ark. And God tells him that a great flood is coming, which will wipe out all life on the planet. And the ark, which Noah is instructed to build, will float upon the water and shelter Noah, his family, and animals, 2 members of each species, male and female, in the teva, in the ark, while the flood is taking place. So Noah was building the ark for 120 years. And 120 years later, which is the year 1656 of Jewish calendar, rain starts falling and underground springs open up for 40 days. So water keeps on increasing on the surface of the planet for 150 days more, and before it starts coming down, it reaches basically the peaks of tallest mountains and actually covers them. And the ark, which was floating simply on the surface of the water, finishes up on top of Mount Ararat. And Noah can see that the rain has stopped actually a long time ago by that time. And he sends birds. Initially he sends a raven, then doves, basically to find out whether the water has subsided, come down, and whether there is dry land somewhere. And eventually, I will not go into the depths of this, it's not really necessary right now. You can listen to the details of all of this in my last year Noah portion. However, 365 days after the flood has started, God commands Noah to leave the teva and to take his family out and all animals, and in order to go and repopulate the earth. Now, yes, you will ask many questions. Obviously, those who didn't listen to the first version of this parsha will say, okay, how come so many animals could fit in the physically fairly limited size ship? We will discuss that in a minute. However, the truth of the matter is that they were living, basically, the ship represented only the physical part of the whole ark, which was the teva, and mostly of them, they lived in a different world, in the spiritual world, and hence the fact that no wolf has attacked a lamb, and lamb was, next to the wolf, and everything was fine, nobody was killed. And so it was all a miracle, or 100% miracle, which was taking place, basically not a hidden but an open miracle. Now, we will not dwell on this, we will go further. So when they came out, Noah first plants a vineyard, which there are lots of discussions, why a vineyard, why, but there are pros and cons. However, and he gets drunk on the wine, which from his crop. Now, then his sons Shem and Japheth are basically blessed by Noah because they step backwards and they cover up their father's nakedness when he falls asleep in this drunk stupor. And on the other hand, his third son, Ham, and grandson Canaan are cursed for taking advantage of his debasement, basically. And the truth of the matter is that Ham actually castrated his father, which is a horrible act of cruelty. The descendants of Noah, so the descendants of all three brothers, Shem, Japheth, and Ham, all remain single language people, and the culture is basically the same for 10 generations. But then they decided to settle down in the valley of Babel, and they decided to build a tower. Why they decided to build a tower? Because they wanted to wrestle the power of control over the world from God. Which, again, it's not that crazy basically, because they spoke Lushan Kodesh, the language of Creator. So theoretically they could. However, because God, we will go into details in a few seconds, God has promised not to wipe out all the people again. He didn't kill them, but what he did is he confused their language. And by confusing their language, he stopped the whole project. And he dispersed the people across the whole planet, right, splitting them into 70 nations. And the Parshat Noah concludes with a chronology of 10 generations from Noah to Abraham. And the journey from his birthplace, Ur, to Haran, on the way to land of Canaan. Now, one would ask here a very pertinent question, I think. It's a relatively short parsha, and why in this parsha suddenly we have got just about everything under the sun? We read the story of building the ark and the flood and the exit of Noah and his family from the ark, and 10 generations from Noah to Abraham, and the Babel Tower building project, and its end by God coming down and mixing up the language, as well as the story, the commencement of story of Abraham. What is the reason why Torah put all of these fairly strong events, full of action and full of different happenings, all together in one parsha? There must be a reason, because Torah does not do anything for no reason at all. There is no happenstance, there is no coincidence in anything. Every word of Torah, every arrangement within Torah has got some sort of a meaning. There is some deep, very deep logic in what Torah is doing and why Hashem is doing that by putting those words in this particular parsha and those stories in this week. So looking from afar, the pre-flood people initially had a very good life. And I quote the Torah. Just listen to this. They were not brutes, they were not, savages. No, they were not. Look at this. Bereshit, Pasuk 3:17. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. And he was building a city, and he called the city after the name of his son Enoch. So, what we have got, they were builders. They could build buildings, brick buildings, they knew exactly, they knew the architecture, they could calculate the structural requirements of the building, so they were not savages from that point of view. Next, Pasuk 4:20. Now Ada bore Jabal. He was the father of those who dwell in the tents and have cattle. So they knew farming. They had cattle farms. Right. 4:21. And his brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all who grasp a lure and a flute. They were musicians, composers. They were writing poems and basically singing songs. And they were playing music. So there was art. 422. And Zillah, she too bore Tubal-Cain, who sharpened all tools that cut copper and iron. And Tubal-Cain's sister was Naamah. So they knew how to handle copper and steel. Do you realize that after they lost it eventually, which they did, after during the flood, because they were all wiped out during the flood, those people, right? It took a good few thousand years for people to come back to the knowledge of steel, how to manufacture iron, how to handle iron and steel. As you can see, they were not brutes without capabilities. However, they thought they were totally immoral, and their sexual behavior and towards each other, they were absolutely horrible. Robbery was a way of life. Their life expectancy was huge, and I will show you a diagram in a few seconds. The life expectancy was just under 1,000 years. They were used to live 900, 800 years approximately, right? This is why they had a lot of opportunities to procreate. Men could procreate from the age of, 20, 30, which when they physically become sexually mature, definitely, right? And up until the age 600, 700, and maybe 800 years old. So this is why the population was growing very fast. And there are reasons to believe that by the time the flood came, the population of the planet was actually in billions, right? I don't know whether it was the same as it's today, around about 7 billion people, but it was very close to that probably. And the men were copulating basically at will. It was a society without rule of law, where the physically stronger person ruled on the street, right, and could force the crowds or mob to do what they wanted to do, and the crowd and the mob were more important than individual. Life of a person was not worth anything. So the stronger individuals were basically controlling the situation. So what we have is a society with no morals, no ethics. And this is why God decided to wipe them out. As you can see, right? So now the year is 1656. The Ark Teva is ready, which is 120 years after God initially told Noah to build it. The site was, you just visualize this. Can you imagine the site where every species, a pair of every species is lined up in a huge queue of animals, right? In front of this gigantic boat, right? And which Noah constructed it for the last 120 years. And it's approximately, to give you an idea, if you see those who live in Sydney and saw the loading helicopter dock in Sydney Harbour, that's approximately the size of the boat, the physical part of it. Anyone standing nearby could could see the giraffes and tigers and ducks and duck-billed platypuses and rabbits and mice and animals and every shape and size of animal patiently waiting their turn to enter the ark, which would save their lives. The people of the evil generations who refused to listen to Noah, to his messages to mankind, watched in disbelief when this procession all proceeded. They all were coming into the ark. And they probably were asking a question, could it be really true? They asked each other, maybe this eccentric who spent 120 years building this giant boat all by himself, miles away from any body of water, maybe he's right. And whenever they questioned Noah about it, Noah would reply, yeah. He would say, you better start praying and repenting for your sins, because God is determined to destroy all living souls of worldwide. The worldwide flood will take place, and you need to, in order to prevent that, you need to change your lifestyle. This immorality must stop right away. Well, they didn't want to do that. This was their lifestyle, and they obviously didn't listen to Noah. So the great flood came in the Jewish year 1656. Now, so why flood? God could destroy people he could burn the planet. He could send, I don't know, some hurricanes. He could wipe out the whole planet many different ways. But he chose to use a flood, the water. The 40 days, one of the explanations I found in the Midrash is very interesting. The 40 days of the flood, of the rain falling, they symbolize the mikvah, because the mikvah size is 40 seah, a measurement of water. So this is 40 units of measure of water in the mikvah. The mikvah, as Tanakh is saying, ritual purity affects the ritual, creates the ritual purity and holiness. And the flood was not only a way of destroying all this immoral population on the planet, as well as the animals, but a way of purifying the world, purifying the whole planet. Another aspect of it is, everyone knows that Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur was going in the mikvah 5 times. Every time he was changing his suit, his clothes, he was going into the mikvah, and that was a way of purifying himself and elevating his soul. Every time he was going through that process, 5 times during the Yom Kippur, he was elevating his souls higher and higher. So the purity of the flood may be dealt with the higher levels of holiness of the planet. Because they were living in an ideal world, the animals, as well as Noah and his family, they didn't want to come out. They knew that the planet is already dry. The dove came back with the olive branch, and they knew that everything can come out. The planet is dry, but they didn't want to come out until Hashem actually told them. God told them, "Get out," and that was the 365th day, and they were ordered to leave the ark. And on the same day, God makes a covenant with Noah, that he will not destroy the entire world again with the flood. And the symbol of this covenant will be the rainbow. He gives people a rainbow, because there was no rainbow prior to that. And if I have time, I will try to explain why. There are physical reasons why there could not be a rainbow prior to the flood. On top of that, God proclaims to Noah and his family the 7 Noahide laws, as they traditionally listed as follows: do not deny God, do not blaspheme God's name, do not murder, do not engage in incestuous, adulterous and homosexual relationships, do not steal, do not eat of an alive animal, means do not, while the animal is not fully killed, you cannot eat from it. And last but not least, establish courts, legal system, and ensure law obedience. So the last of the 7 high laws is what I would like to concentrate on. The problem of people prior to the flood was that they had no laws, they had no police, they were at anarchy. The society was a total anarchy. So when they accepted those laws, they were one nation. And as I said earlier, all the descendants of the three sons of Noah traveled and they reached the valley of Babel. And it happened so that Nimrod, one of the descendants of Ham, he was not entitled to be a king, but because he was the strongest, he was the best hunter, he was very smart, very streetwise, and very diplomatic, he could deal with people, he managed to climb to the top and he became the very first dictator on this planet. Nimrod was one of the sons of Cush, and Cush was the son of Ham, which was the lowest of the families at that point in time. Because Noah cursed them with the following words: "Cursed be Canaan, a slave of slaves, shall he be unto his brothers." And on Nimrod's order, they were definitely all united society with strict sets of laws and with the police enforcement of those laws. But who was creating the laws? The laws were created and the whole system was controlled by Nimrod, the dictator. So they decided to wage a war on God. And what they were saying, we will build a tower to ascend heaven and to battle the Almighty. In any case, from the ideological standpoint of view, they were much worse than the generation of flood, because they were trying to defy God. However, they were not killed for two reasons. Because Hashem promised that he will never do it again, he will never wipe out people completely again. But the other redeeming quality they had, comparing to the pre-flood generation, they had unity amongst them. They were all one nation, one tribe. When they started the construction of the Babel Tower, they were very concerned about this whole project, which was uniting the whole nation. But the life of individual was not important. What was important is the well-being and the achievement of the society. The sages commented that when a brick would fall down during the construction of the tower, people will be in shock. They will bemoan the loss, and they will complain, they will cry and scream how long it will take to carry another one up, another brick. However, if a person fell down, it was considered okay. People are expendable. So it's very strange here that such a monolithic society could not produce an independent thinker like Abraham, which eventually will come to him. So what has transpired here? And this is what has happened actually. So God confused them into the 70 different languages. So they could not communicate with each other and could not continue with such a enormous, complicated project. According to the Midrash, 1/3 of the tower collapsed, 1/3 sunk into the ground, and one remained where it was as a reminder to the mankind of what has transpired. The 70 languages were scattered around the globe, the tribes with 70 languages, giving rise to diverse cultures, and only the descendants of Shem, the Semites, retained the original language, the Hebrew, the Lushan Kodesh. One of the rabbis from the 19th century Voloshin Yeshiva, he was the Rosh Yeshiva of the Voloshin Yeshiva, his name was the Rabbi Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin. He had a very interesting and instructive view on this plan, on the bubble plan. He explains that they were the first social engineers hoping to create a utopian society where all lived and thought as one. And they feared that if some people would settle their own colonies and towns, they would develop their own cultures and unique modes of living. They wanted everyone to live in one controlled environment where they would be able to make sure that all remain culturally homogeneous, exactly the same culture. The tower served as a base around which people would conduct their life, would settle down around as a colony, and no one was allowed leaving the immediate environments or around the tower without special permits. The problem was that their plan was that it was the first step towards a tyrannical state where no individual expression would be tolerated. You know, it's very similar to George Orwell's 1984 or The Animal Farm. And this is why God split them actually into the separate nations. So what we learn here is that the Torah teaching us that both extremes are not good. The lawless society without legal system cannot survive simply because everyone is in danger all the time, constantly. Without support of systemic set of laws enforced by police, the society cannot survive. It leads to anarchy. The society will have a high crime rate, corruption, violence, and we do have countries today like this. Central African Republic, Chad, Dominican Republic, Honduras, Iraq, Mexico, Nigeria, South Africa, right? There is no rule of law. Is it a decent, normal life for people to live in that kind of environment? The answer is no. The other extreme is total dictatorship, which is Nimrod's dictatorship in this example, where the ideology of the society dominates over the individuals, and the life of a person is worthless. You want examples of these kind of countries? There we go. Genghis Khan, Ivan the Terrible, Hitler, Stalin, Robert Mugabe today, Omar al-Bashir, Kim Jong-un, King Abdullah in Saudi Arabia, and there will be probably quite a few others. Torah tells us, neither extreme, a lawless society or a dictatorship, is the way for you, my children, to develop your civilization. And this parsha finishes with Abraham, where Hashem is telling us, follow him, follow the Torah. And this is why Abraham, you know, it takes a lot of effort to find out actually how it comes Abraham had the freedom to develop his mind and really to understand what is going on. The truth of the matter is that Terah, Abraham's father, was a very high public servant in Nimrod's dictatorship. And Terah was an idol worshipper, like his king, and but he was trusted by Nimrod. Now, Nimrod's stargazers told him that there will be a child which will threaten his power. So what Nimrod was doing was killing all newborn male children all the time, as soon as he found out that. So when Terah's wife got pregnant and bore a son, Terah basically lied. What he has done, he hidden his wife with Abraham in a cave, and he took one of his slaves' newborn babies and told Nimrod that this is my baby, yes, this is my son, you can kill him. So the baby Abraham and his mother and nurse were hidden in a cave for 10 years. And at the age of 3, Abraham knew that it was silly to worship the sun or any other idol which they were worshipping. And then the rest of the story we know. And Abraham started, and God saw him, and God knew that this is the human being which will be very important in the whole history of our civilization. And this is something which we will discover in the Parshas later on. Have a nice day, enjoy yourself, and I hope I told you something interesting. Why we consider ourselves the children of Abraham. Goodbye.